My name's Alison Parkinson. I just recently started working for Adoption UK because my twins are 18 and have left home. Yay! In a good way. One's at college and one is now working. So I have a bit more time on my hands to do this sort of stuff. So great so far. So I'm just going to mention a little bit about attachment, which is something that you hear quite a lot about when you're an adoptive parent. So when we talk about attachment, we're talking about the development that happens with very young children. So what happens when a baby has a need, say it's hungry, it expresses that need by crying, the caregiver will pick the baby up and soothe it and meet its need, and the baby relaxes and is happy. And this is called the attachment cycle. And that happens, who knows how many times, when you're bringing up a wee baby. So you can see that you're meeting its need, but what you can't see is what's going on in its brain. And every time you do that, you're forming a good pathway in that baby's brain. And so their brain wires up in a good way, in an organized way. And the baby has a good view of itself. It sees itself as lovable. It sees itself as able to make things happen. And so it can go on to its next stage of development, where it starts to explore the world and find out about things. And meanwhile, it's building up an internal view of the world, that the adults in it are kind and they're loving and they look after you, and that the world is a good place, it's an exciting place, and it's a safe place. And so for a child that's had that kind of care, we say they have got healthy attachment. Now, unfortunately, the children that are coming through for adoption have usually not had that kind of care in their birth family. And so they've probably been in a family where their needs perhaps have been met inconsistently. So one time they cry and they're fed, the next time they cry, they're not fed. And the next time they cry, they're shouted at. So their brain doesn't wire up in a nice, organised way because it's not being treated in an organised way. Their needs might be entirely unmet. They might even be abused. And so rather than their brain wiring up and sort of developing these higher functions, their brain is stuck at survival stage. And the baby is just concerned with how to survive. And so instead of developing as the happy baby did, this baby, as it develops into a toddler and a younger child, is still stuck in that survival mode of how am I going to get my needs met? And so we say that that child has an unhealthy or a disorganized or a faulty attachment. And so the child has a sense of self where it feels unwanted or unloved. And so it develops a view that is kind of fearful and distrustful. And its view of adults, unlike the happy baby, it's going to see adults really as the source of the problem. They're untrustworthy, they're unloving, they are unsafe, and the world is a miserable place. It's unsafe, it's scary, and it's hostile. So unfortunately, this is the sort of place where the children who are being placed for adoption, that's going to be more the kind of view of the world that they have, rather than perhaps the children that you might come in contact with that are your friends' children or children in your family. And so when we see children with an unhealthy attachment, you might see that they talk all the time and they ask lots of questions. I have to say that's not because they're interested, it's because they're trying to get your attention. And they've learned to get fed, you must keep the attention of adults. So if you talk at them all the time, they might remember you and feed you. They tend to have poor impulse control because they're still stuck in this survival mechanism where, you know, as soon as you see something, you've got to grab it because it might not be there 5 minutes later. And they can be quite clingy, again, because they need to keep your attention all the time because their view of adults is that they just, go off and leave you around. And yeah, so my son spent quite a lot of time clamped to my leg for the first few months that he was with us. They also sometimes display behaviour that's quite difficult in society because they might lie or steal, again, because they are in survival mode. So as far as they're concerned, if I want that, I'm going to take it because nobody's going to give it to me. And they will just lie to protect themselves. So this can just make life quite difficult for them and for us as adoptive parents. So when they come to us for adoption, it would be really great if you could turn them off like a faulty computer and turn them on again, and then they go to the default factory setting. But sadly, that doesn't happen. You have to work with the development that you've got. The good news is that the brain is still really plastic and able to develop. We used to think that kids were fixed at about 3 and that was that, but now we've realised that the brain stays plastic for many years, even into adulthood. So what you can do is you can sort of get rid of these destructive pathways, and you can install new pathways by the same thing that you do with a baby, meeting the need and providing care for the children. And it takes quite a long time, and it can be quite hard work, but it does work. And this is the basis of what we refer to as therapeutic reparenting. So you're being a parent and you're being a therapist. But, it does work. My kids came to me, they were nearly 6. So, they'd spent quite a long time in a poor birth family. But now they're independent adults. And so far, so good. Touch wood. Thank you.